Good morning, everyone. I request you to please join by your names only. Don't join by any numbers or any special characters. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, Srinivas.
Okay. A very pleasant good morning to one and all present here. I, Shahnawaz Syed, a student of second year Information Technology Department, and all the staff and students of GH Raisoni Institute of Business Management, Jalgaon, welcomes you all for this wonderful session on the topic Information Retrieval under short-term training program on machine learning and data science. In this series, I would now like to hand over the mic to Mrs. Sonal Patel ma'am, Head of Computer Science and Information Technology Department, to say a few words.
Thank you, Shahnawaz. Just confirm I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Hello. Okay. A very good morning to everyone. And again, we are joined over here for the excellent, wonderful topic session, that is information retrieval, which is again related to machine learning. Now it's our last day, and really all sessions were very nice, and we have received very good feedback from all the participants. It was really nice to get such feedbacks from all of you. The cultural evening, you all appreciated our student association. Thank you so much for that. I welcome you, Dr. Mansi Radke, ma'am, on behalf of GH Raisoni Institute of Business Management, Jalgaon. I am thankful to you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation, and you are going to spare your valuable time for all of us today. We are very eager to hear the things about information retrieval because it is a very interesting topic, and I should say information retrieval is nothing but it is related to each and everything we are doing with the Googling and everything. So it will be very interesting to hear. Thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and sparing your valuable time. Over to you, Shahnawaz.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable words. And now I would like to introduce our today's resource person. Our today's resource person is Professor Mansi Radke, ma'am. She has done her MS in Computer Science at University of Maryland, Baltimore, USA. Her areas of interest are information retrieval and semantic web. She is currently working as an assistant professor in Computer Science and Engineering Department at VNIT Nagpur. So before handing over the mic to ma'am, I would request all the participants to be on mute for the smooth conduct of the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Your name I forgot, Shahnawaz, I think. So yes, thank you so much for that.
Ma'am, I would interrupt you. Ma'am, we have almost received more than 700 registrations for this workshop. And after 2 days also, we have received the request from the various participants. And those who are not able to attend the session due to their busy schedule because of YouTube, they are able to view the sessions in their free time. And we have done one thing that we have kept quiz. Whatever sessions all participants are having in a day, based on all these 3 sessions, they have to submit the quiz. So that we have done, and from that we have found out every day's active learner and the top scorers. So that one more thing we have done in the STTP, ma'am.
Very interesting, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for this information.
Okay, ma'am. Over to you.
Okay. So shall I share my screen now, ma'am? Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Yeah. Yes, madam. So, basically, I am Mansi, and as ma'am and Shahnawaz have introduced me already, I would like to give some brief introduction about myself before I start the session. I have done my bachelor's from Cummins College of Engineering for Women, Pune, after which I did my master's MS in University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, USA. And also I have completed my PhD from Vishweshwarya National Institute of Technology. And I have 14 plus years of experience together in industry and academics. Out of which 5 years I have worked in the industry and my previous employers include Cummins India Limited, Pune, SAP Washington DC office, Persistent Systems Nagpur. And in my teaching experience, I have been a teaching assistant at UMBC Maryland, USA. I have also been an instructor of computer science at Houston Tillotson University, Austin, Texas, USA. I was in Ramdev Baba College of Engineering, Nagpur for 1 semester in 2011-12. And since 2012, I have been working as an assistant professor in Vishweshwarya National Institute of Technology, Nagpur. Now it's more than 9 years that I am here. My research interests include information retrieval and data science, geographical information retrieval, natural language processing, and I heavily work in NLP and machine learning to apply all these techniques to IR problems, information retrieval problems. For this particular presentation, the books I have used are An Introduction to Information Retrieval by Christopher Manning, Heinrich Schulz, and Prabhakar Raghavan. And the reference book I have used is An Information Retrieval, Implementing and Evaluating Search Engines by Stephen Butcher, Charles Clark, and Gordon Cormack. So today's agenda, to tell you briefly about today's agenda, I am going to introduce you to the basics of information retrieval. Then we will see what it is, how it is, and how it is evaluated in general, what are the performance metrics for an IR system. And then I will end the lecture with some research directions in information retrieval. So let's start formally. What is information retrieval? It is a activity of obtaining information from a collection of information resources or a data collection. Now, we do this every day. Like when we want to search some information, we put our keywords in the Google search bar and we get our results. So in layman's language, this is nothing but a information retrieval system is nothing but termed as a search engine. Now, the collection on which this search engine works is called as the corpus. And in case of Google, Bing, Yahoo, MSN search engines, which we know, this corpus is nothing but the World Wide Web. So when we have the corpus as the World Wide Web, we call it as a web search engine. So what are the components of an IR system? So the components of an IR system are, you have some information need in the mind of the user. So it is there in his mind, some query is there in his mind, and he translates the query in the form of some machine understandable keywords. And then he passes it to the search engine. The search engine has lot of documents with it or lot of collection data data documents with it, and they are indexed with the search engine. Every day this index undergoes some changes. So some additions happen to the search engine, some deletions of documents happen from the search engine, and this index keeps on getting updated periodically. Now, few years back, Google used to do it like every week or something. So I don't know the frequency now. Maybe it does it more frequently now that more computing power and memory and other resources are available with us. So what are the steps in information retrieval? So in information retrieval, the first step is crawling. You need to crawl your corpus, like go through all the documents of your corpus and index them. You need to crawl the World Wide Web to scrape the data and to have all your documents collected at one place. Then you pre-process those documents to extract the contents. Then there is an additional step which is called as tagging. What do you mean by tagging? Tagging can be of any type. For example, if you have a lot of Flickr photos, then you may want to tag them with the location at which the photo was taken. Okay. Other kind of tagging could be geotag. For example, if the document is mentioning about content about India, then India could be a tag to that document. If I am talking about a bookshop which is in Delhi, then Delhi could be the tag of that document, geographical tag. So in this way, there are various kinds of tagging done. And then we have indexing. Indexing is done to help ease the search mechanism. As in a database, we create an index to make the search faster. Similarly, here indexing is done. So the data gets organized in some manner, and then it becomes easy to retrieve the data. Then we do relevance ranking. Now, till all these steps till here are one-time processes. So they are done only once. After this, relevance ranking and displaying the results to the user, these two steps are query specific and are done for every query. Okay. So when a query comes, we rank all the documents according to how relevant the document is with respect to the query. And then we display the results to the user. Now, I use the term corpus frequently, and as I told you, it's nothing but the collection of documents on which the search is actually performed. And examples of this could be the Reuters corpus, which is a news corpus, World Wide Web, which is the corpus for all search engines. The news articles, sports articles, history articles, legal documents. Any particular corpus can form your, any particular data collection can form your corpus. What is the difference between structured and unstructured data? Structured data is something which is searchable by basic algorithms. For example, if you take an Excel sheet, it has specific columns associated with it, and you can search according to the name of the column. You can sort the data, you can search the data, you can compare the data. Similarly, we have relational database where we have all the fields. We have the fields and the data values associated with all the fields. We have primary key, we have foreign key, and there is a proper structure to that data. But if I consider natural language text, like a free-flowing natural language text, though it has some grammar associated with it, it is not very strongly structured. So it is not searchable by basic search algorithms, right? So this kind of unstructured data, which is in the form of natural languages like any language, German, Spanish, English, any Indian language, all these languages are unstructured when you consider the free-flowing text. So information retrieval deals with structured as well as unstructured data, both. Okay. Now, what is the difference between information retrieval and data mining? We have heard the word data mining. There is a subtle difference. Information retrieval system will retrieve the data in the same format as it is available in the data store. For example, if you have a .docx document in the repository, it will be retrieved as it is and brought up for you. In data mining, what is done is some hidden patterns in the data are analyzed. For example, if you have a supermarket, sales data could indicate, if you have a supermarket and your sales data could indicate that a person who is interested in buying eggs is also interested in buying bread. So what you can do is, when you get this kind of analysis from the data, you can keep your bread and eggs in the same aisle. So it is like finding out mining out or finding out some patterns in the data and adjusting your business according to its needs. So there is subtle difference. Like, for example, we today have data mining and information retrieval are close, and we have situations where mining is done in information retrieval too. For example, if you go to the Google search bar and you type population of Delhi and you hit the enter button, what you will get is population of Delhi, documents containing information about population of Delhi, a list of documents. But in addition, you will also get some actual figure of the population of Delhi. If you try that out, you will see that you also get an actual figure. So how does that happen? It happens with the form of with the use of some underlying knowledge bases. So information retrieval and data mining are close, but there is a subtle difference. Okay. So what is the difference between information need and the query? Query is nothing but a computer understandable representation of the information need. Okay, so if a query is badly formed, doesn't mean the information need is bad or something. Information need is what is in the mind of the user, the requirement which is in the mind of the user. And one thing is in IR is important is that you have to evaluate you have to evaluate the results on the basis of the information need and not with respect to the query, because query could be malformed. Okay. And relevance. Relevance is also with respect to the information need, how relevant a document is to the need of the user. Okay, so we talked of indexing. And how do we index the documents? There is a specific technique. It is inspired from typical books. So if you take any textbook, big textbook, at the end you will have every word and on which page that word is occurring. Do you relate to it? So what happens is, if the word is say fever, if it's a medical book and the word is fever, then fever occurs on which page numbers, that will be listed out. Similar concept is there here in information retrieval. You have every term in your corpus is taken, and that forms your dictionary or lexicon or okay. And then every document, whichever document the word is occurring, that is listed out in front of it. So if you concentrate on the screen, we can see that there are 3 documents in the corpus. We are considering a hypothetical corpus where there are only 3 documents. I am Mansi is the first document. I live in Nagpur is the second document, and I am a teacher is the third document. Okay. So dictionary for this corpus will consist of following words. So you take the unique words out of this. Which are the unique words? I am Mansi. I is repeated now. Then live in Nagpur. I is repeated. Am is repeated. A teacher. So our dictionary or lexicon or vocabulary will consist of I am Mansi, live in Nagpur, a teacher. As you can see on the right side of the slide, there are all these terms which are occurring in the vocabulary or the lexicon or the dictionary. And then in front of every word, we can see, for example, am occurs in document 1 and document 3. So am will be written document 1, document 3, and then null. So these are in sorted order. These are in sorted order. Document 1, then 2, then 3. And as you can see, Nagpur is there only in document 2. So only document 2 and then null. So this structure, which consists of term vocabulary plus posting list for each term. This kind of structure where we have the documents is called as a posting list for that particular term. This collection of posting list for each term and the dictionary is called as the inverted index for the corpus. Okay. And indexing is a one-time activity. So all this is done only once. So if we want to draw the inverted index for the following document collection, what we will do is we will pick up the unique words from this collection. Unique words are new, home, sales, stop, forecast. Home is repeated, sales is repeated, rise, in, July, increase, in is repeated, home is repeated, sales is repeated, in is repeated, July is repeated. New is also repeated, July is also repeated, home is also repeated, sales is also repeated, and we have price is also repeated. So basically whatever were the unique words, we will write them here. Then one technique, typical technique or practice is we sort these terms in the vocabulary in the form of, in the ascending order of their alphabetically, lexicographically, and then we form the inverted index so that it has a proper format. And this dictionary plus posting list which we created is called as the inverted index, as I already told you. So for example, let us consider sales. Sales is occurring in all 4 documents. So it has the posting list for sales will be 1, 2, 3, 4 and null. Similarly, in is occurring only in 2 documents, document 2 and document 3. So in we have 2, 3 and null. So this is the inverted index. This is another example of inverted index. We have the documents and stop word list. What it is, we will see shortly. So be patient till we come to this concept of stop word list. But all the terms in the document 1, 2 and 3 are included in the term, and which document they occur in is listed in the posting list. Then we have the term document incidence matrix. Again, we consider the same hypothetical corpus, document 1, 2 and 3. And what we have to do is list out all the unique terms and have columns, 1 column for each document. And if a term is occurring in a particular document, we mark it as 1. If a term is not occurring in a particular document, we mark it as 0. Okay. Now there is another variant of the term document incidence matrix where we have the frequency of the term in the document. So for example, if I was occurring 3 times in document 1, instead of 1 0, I would put 3, right? So this is like a binary term document incidence matrix, but we can have it depending on term frequency also. Okay. So this was about term document incidence matrix. So now if we were to draw the term document incidence matrix for this, we will first write all the terms, then sort them according to the lexicographical or alphabetical order. And then we will write 1 0 based on whether that term occurs in that particular document. And this is called as the term document incidence matrix. Okay. So this is the term document incidence matrix made for this particular corpus, which I showed on slide number 20. Okay. Now let us assume for the time being that this matrix is there with us, and let's try to address this kind of queries. So what is a vector for, what is the return result for schizophrenia and drug? So schizophrenia vector is, as you can see on the screen, 1 1 1 1, and vector for drug is, as you can see on the screen, the second row, 1 1 0 0. So if I want to AND these two, I will AND them in like every bit, and what I get is document 1 and 2 will be returned for this. So document 1 and 2 will be returned for this, because every element of the vector is corresponding to one document. Okay. Now for and not drug or approach. So drug or approach will be, we take the vector for drug, we take the vector for approach, we OR it. Then we do not of it. Not of it will give us 0 0 0 1. And then for and not drug or approach, we will have to AND 0 0 0 1 with the vector for. As we can see on the previous screen, vector for is 1 0 1 1. And finally, we get that document 4 will be returned for this query. Okay. This is how Boolean retrieval is typically done. What is Boolean retrieval? We will see shortly. Okay. So term frequency of a term in a document. Consider the following document. How many times does the word geography occur in that document? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 times. And how many times does the word blog occur in the document? I think it occurs 7 times. So basically, this indication of how many times a particular term is occurring in the document is called as the term frequency of a term in a document. So term frequency is related to a term, and it is with respect to a document. So the term frequency of a term in one document might be different, in another document it might be different. Another important fundamental concept is about the frequency of a term in a corpus. What do you mean by term in a corpus? Suppose you have 100 words where cat appears 3 times. Okay. Out of the 100 words, document containing 100 words, we have cat appearing 3 times. So the term frequency for cat is 3. And out of 10, and suppose we have 10 million documents and cat appears in 1000 of those, then the document frequency of the term in the corpus will be 1000. Now it is, in simple words, what I can say is number of documents in the corpus which contain the particular term. Okay. So for example, if I consider a word the, it will occur in almost all documents. So it will have the term document frequency equal to the number of documents in the corpus. So stop words in English and the concept of stop list. What do you mean by stop words? If you see, there are some words like and, the, for, which, where, here, there, very, will, just, and so on, which are very commonly present in all the documents, but which do not have a specific importance in terms of they do not convey very useful information when we consider the queries. For example, if I say our VNIT college, then the important word here is VNIT. The next important word is college, but our is not that important. Any other query which contains this and this. So I need not search for and will occur in every document. So in this way, stop words are words which occur in most of the documents and they are not that important and we can ignore them. And so the algorithms ignore these kind of stop words, and the list of such words which are stored in the programs generally, so that it enables the algorithms to ignore those words. It is called as a stop list. And this is a typical English stop list shown on the screen. Okay, it is a typical English language stop list. Okay, now we come to a very important concept in information retrieval, the term frequency inverse document frequency model. Okay, the term frequency we already saw that it is the number of times the term occurs in a document. Document frequency is what? Document frequency is number of documents which contain the particular term in that corpus. So term frequency is with respect to a document and document frequency is with respect to a corpus. This is the subtle difference important difference which you have to remember. Then inverse document frequency is log of n by DFT. It is given by n is the total number of documents in the corpus and DFT is the document frequency of that particular term. So why do we need this term frequency inverse document frequency model? So let's see its importance. The main usage of this is that stop words get handled in this model. If I have the query the brown crow, the is least important, right? It will occur in every document. So let's see how it helps in our calculation. The brown crow. The occurs in almost every document. So the document frequency of the term the in the corpus will be nearly close to n, which is the number of documents in the corpus. And term frequency of the is say TF, then IDF will be log of n by DFT, which will be log of n by something close to n, which will be log of 1, and that will be something close to 0. So what it gives you is a very small number close to 0. And when you multiply term frequency by a very small number, its value becomes very small. So its importance is brought down in the query. Like the brown word will get more weight and importance, the will get very less weight and crow will get medium weight. This is done through the TF-IDF model. So why is the IDF of a term always finite? Why is the IDF of a term always finite? This is because if you consider the inverse document frequency of a term, it is log of n by DFT, and if a document, it will become infinite only when DFT is 0, when the denominator is 0. And that will not become 0 because you will not have the calculation unless the term occurs in at least one document. So the denominator has to be at least 1. So it prevents the IDF of a term from going to infinity. With this we have already done the brown crow. Then can the TF-IDF weight of a term in a document exceed 1? Yes, it can exceed 1 because you multiply it by the term frequency, whatever IDF value you get, it is a positive value, and then you multiply it by term frequency. So it is bound to exceed 1 in some cases, if the term frequency is very high. So while calculating the TF-IDF scores, how does the base of the logarithm affect the scoring of the documents or ranking of the documents for a given query? This is something like we have to understand mathematically that if one document is having a TF-IDF score high and the other document is having a low score, then we can rank them accordingly. If we take with base 2 or base 10 or base E, the relative ranking remains same though the actual values change. Okay, so that is an important concept. Then next thing in information retrieval, one concept I want to tell you is about stemming, lemmatization, and case folding. What is stemming? Stemming is chopping off the affixes. Like for example, marketing. I can chop off ing and come to the original form of the word, which is market. Porter stemmer, snowball stemmer, Lancaster stemmer are some examples of inbuilt stemmers which are available in libraries. Okay, so recommended one is snowball stemmer because it is kind of balanced, and Porter stemmer is kind of outdated or dated now. And some examples I told you, like marketing, market, successful, success. Then we have case folding. You bring down everything to lowercase so that you can match in the document. So next is lemmatization. What is lemmatization? Lemma is the original form of the word, and instead of chopping off just the affixes like manually or mechanically, it goes to the root form of the word. Root form as in, we have some examples of lemmatizers like NLTK, TextBlob, Spacy, and Core NLP, and we recommend Spacy. It is a good lemmatizer. Examples are saw will come down to C, is will become B, was will become B, and so on. So there are several information retrieval models which come into picture. First is the Boolean model, as we saw in the case of schizophrenia and drug, and for and not drug or approach, and we tried to find out for the queries what was typically the number, what documents would typically be returned for those particular queries. Then we have the vector space model, wherein we have every term in the vocabulary, it acts as one dimension in the high dimensional space, and then we represent the vector accordingly, and then the query is also represented in the high dimensional space, and we calculate the angle between the query vector and the document, each document vector. And the smaller the angle, the higher the cost value, the higher the relevance. Okay, so we'll see this vector space model in a short while. I told you in brief. Then we have the probabilistic model, which is based on the probability ranking principle, which states that the number of, the more the probability of a document being relevant to the query, and if we follow that order and rank the documents for the user, the effectiveness of the system to the user is likely to be maximized. This is the probability ranking principle, and the entire probabilistic model is based on that. Then we have language models, and finally we come to our first basic model, that is the Boolean model. So what happens in Boolean model is either a document is returned or it is not returned. There is nothing like less or more. So basically the queries are formed with the help of and, or, and not operators. This is not practically used, but it was one of the first model which came into being. There is no ordering of the results. The document is either relevant or not relevant. So there is no ordering because there is nothing like more relevant or less relevant or anything of that sort. There is no degree of relevance. All the documents have the same rank with respect to the query. And only way to change the output is to reformulate the query. Okay. Now I give you a very interesting exercise. You go to any search engine, Google, Bing, Yahoo, MSN, any search engine, and you type any particular word, say VNIT. And then you type VNIT and VNIT. Or you type, after that you type VNIT or VNIT. And you see whether it is following the Boolean logic. You see whether it is following the Boolean logic. What should happen is, and query should have less number of results, or query should have more number of results. And if I give the query night or any particular word A and another word B, and then I give the third query with A or B, what bound should it have on the number of documents which are returned. Basically, the number of documents which are returned should be at least as much as the bigger output of the two terms A and V, but that bound is not observed. So this is something interesting because Boolean retrieval is not blindly followed in the search engines. So now we have our posting list and we have our query. Suppose it is an AND query, like term A and term B. Then how will you find out the intersection? You have the posting list in front of you and you have the posting list of term 2 and term 1 in front of you, and you want to see for which find out the documents which contain both the terms. So what we will do is you will have to intersect the two posting lists, and a typical algorithm for intersection is you check if both are not null, then if both document IDs are same, like the same document is appearing in posting list of both the documents, both the terms in the query, then you add the particular document ID to the answer tuple or the answer list, and you like move your pointers ahead. And you keep on doing this. So let's see with the help of an example. If I have term 1 and I have this document 1, then I have document 2, and then I have document 3, and then I have null, and I have term 2, and I have document 2, and I have document 4, and I have document 5. So when I keep my one pointer here and the other pointer here, is the document ID matching? No. Then I go to this part of the code where I increment the smaller document ID. So I come here. Now the document IDs are matching D2, D2. So I add my D2 to the answer list. That is, both words in the query are present in the document D2. And I increment both the pointers. Is it available? Is D3 and D4 same? No. So I increment the smaller pointer. It comes out of the loop and the program ends. So my answer is I have D2, which contains both the terms T1 and T2. Okay. Similarly, now we might think that if there is intersection between multiple query terms, there are not only two terms, but there are multiple terms, say 3 terms, term 1, term 2, term 3. So for a conjunctive query, that is for an AND query, is the processing of posting list in order of size guaranteed to be optimal? Okay, now it seems practically that it might be optimal. So if I have 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the term 3 list is 10, 11, 20, 30, and 50. Actually, if I see if I AND term 1 with term 3 and get a null, immediately I don't need to do anything further. I know that the answer is a null set. But if I want to go by the size or order of the posting list, then I will AND 1, 2, 3 with 2, 3, 4, 5. I will process the algorithm. I'll get 2 and 3 as the answer. And then I will AND it with term 3 to get a null set. So this is a counter example proving that we need not have the conjunctive query processing in order of size, giving an optimal answer. So like we saw the posting list intersection for an AND query, we can also see the posting list intersection for a union or an OR query. So this is the algorithm. It's simple. Just that we have to check if the document IDs are same, we add it. Otherwise, if document ID of P1 is less, then also we add it and increment P1. Otherwise, we add P2 and increment P2. And then at the end, we need to write 2 loops which just process the remaining part of the posting list so that the entire list gets exhausted and the correct or output is given to us. Now we are talking of posting list intersection. There is also intersection with skips. I will cover this shortly in the interest of time. This is the algorithm which is there in the book. However, I will just introduce what is a skip pointer. A skip pointer is this green pointer which is introduced in additional to the normal pointers which are there in the posting list. These are then processed and at how much length do you place these pointers? These are placed if P is the length of the posting list, then they are generally placed at root P length. Okay. And then we have algorithm for accessing, like you keep on skipping you keep on accessing the skip pointers till the point your value of the posting list element is less than document ID is less than the document ID which is pointed to by the other posting list. So this is what I covered in short. If you are interested, you can go through this algorithm from the book. And then we have the concept of positional positional index. What is positional index? In positional index, along with the document ID, you also have the position at which the term is stored. For example, how do you read this? The word to occurs so many times, 993427 times, and out of which it occurs 6 times in document 1, 5 times in document 2, 5 times in document 4, 2 times in document 5, and 3 times in document 7. And in the angle brackets, it tells at how much, at what positions in the document it is occurring. So a typical advantage of having a positional index is that you have to, it enables the search of phrases. So for example, if the word is to be, phrase is to be. So if 2 occurs at position 7, in the same document, B occurs at position 8, then it means that the phrase to be is there in that particular document. This is another examples where we have fool's rush in. So you have to check if the document ID matches, you check the positions are consequence, positions are one after the other contiguous, then you say that the phrase is present. So what are the disadvantages of Boolean retrieval model? Boolean retrieval model gives counterintuitive results for certain types of queries. For example, if you say A and B and C and D and E, it will give very less number of documents and very low precision and recall, and the size of the output either becomes too large or too small depending on how you are ANDing or ORing. There is no ranking, everything is at the same rank. Okay. And it is difficult to give weighting to the documents, and it also difficult to perform relevance feedback. What is relevance feedback? We will see after some time. So as I told you, vector space model, I told you orally, but let's see with the help of a diagram now. So if there is a corpus where there are only 2 terms, assume a hypothetical corpus where there are only 2 terms, so there will be only 2 dimensions, x and y, and then you represent your document 1 as xy coordinates and you represent it as a vector in the blue, and document D2 is a vector in the form of in the color red, and the query vector is in the color green. And then you calculate the angle alpha and theta with respect to document 1 and query and document 2 and query. And smaller the angle, greater is the cos value and greater is the similarity. And in this way, vector space model works in very high dimensional space. Okay. Then you must have seen now vector space model itself has many variants, but I am not covering all of them in the interest of time. Those who are interested, they can refer to the book An Introduction to Information Retrieval by Christopher Manning, Heinrich Schulze, and Prabhakar Raghavan. Dictionaries and tolerant retrieval. So when you type, so here you can see information retrieval, I have typed the spelling of retrieval wrong. It's R-E-T-R-I-V-A-L. Instead of RETRIEVAL. So Google will give me showing results for information retrieval instead of information retrieval. So why is that so? Because it recognizes that there is an error and it checks in the vocabulary, its term vocabulary, if there is any word very close to this, and then gives the output for that particular word. So this is done through string matching algorithms, and edit distance is one of those. This is done through string matching algorithms, and edit distance is one of those. So let's see how the edit distance algorithm works. So you want to find the edit distance between cats and fast. Okay, you want to find the edit distance between cats and fast. You will get the Lamistian distance as 3. This is the edit distance. Okay, so let's see how to do it. So F and C are different. So you say this is 1 plus 1, 2, 0 plus 1, 1, 1 plus 1, 2, and minimum of these 3 is 1. Okay, F and A are different. They are not coinciding. So basically what you do is 2 plus 1, 3, 1 plus 1, 2, 1 plus 1, 2, minimum is 2. And you keep on doing this, and whatever value you get here is the edit distance. Now, what we are doing here is basically this corresponds to deletion, this corresponds to insertion, this corresponds to replacement. And we can see the algorithm that we have a matrix, we initialize ij to 0, and for this particular row, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this particular column, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. What does this mean? We can convert cats to fast by inserting FAST and deleting CATS. Okay. And a diagonal entry represents replacement. So there are 3 operations: insertion, deletion, and replacement. And each of them can have same cost or have different cost. Now in this example, I am considering same cost, but we could have replacement as 2 cost, deletion as 3 cost, and insertion as 1 cost, and then do the whole logic. And then at the end, what you get is the minimum edit distance. And if this edit distance is very small, it tries to calculate the minimum edit distance between the terms in the vocabulary which are close to it. And then the term with minimum edit distance is taken as the replacement for that. Okay. So these are some analysis of the edit distance algorithm. And I can say that this 3 can come from this 3 or this 3 or this 3, and we can trace back the answer. So you can see here that the insertion is represented as a leftward arrow, the deletion is upward arrow, and replacement is diagonal arrow. These 3 are the important interpretations of the edit distance algorithm, and we can trace back our answer. For example, inserting I, deleting XE, deleting C, and replacing U by N, we get the final answer. When we want to change intention to execution to intention. Okay, so another example of an algorithm which is used in pattern matching is Knuth-Morris-Pratt algorithm. And if you are really interested in this algorithm, it's a very beautiful algorithm, and it works in the complexity, linear complexity, never backtracks on the input string. And I would point you to the book Cormeth for reading this. If time permits, I can show you some video on this Knuth-Morris-Pratt algorithm, but I'm not sure how much time we have. So this is about Knuth-Morris-Pratt. Then we have our IR system, but how do we evaluate it? So to evaluate a IR system, like for any system, we need to know how good or bad it is, and how it is performing with respect to the performance metric. So there are 3 key things which we need to consider. We need to consider first, what is the document collection? We should have one document collection with us. Then we should have a set of information needs with us, which can be expressed as queries in the computer understandable form. And then we should have a set of relevance judgment, like binary assessment of whether a document is relevant or not to every query document pair. Okay, so based on relevant or not relevant input or annotation, we have to work. So what is this annotation? With respect to the information need, a document, the test collection is given 0 or 1, marked 0 or 1, depending on whether it is relevant or not. And this is called as gold standard or gold truth judgment of the relevance. And the process of doing this is known as annotation. And the people who do this, they are called as gold laborer. So now the question that will come to your mind is, I have, say, a document collection of 1,000 documents. So how many queries do I need to test the system for to say whether it is good or bad? A rule of thumb is 50 information needs is considered enough, sufficient minimum for any size of the corpus. This is an empirical result which is done through experimentation. So then we have a development test collection, which also is like to tune the parameters. Okay, it's typically used to tune the parameters so that we can use that on the test collection. Okay, so let's come to the main part. How is an IR system evaluated? An IR system is evaluated with some metrics such as precision, recall, F1 measure. Okay, what is precision? What fraction of the returned results are relevant to the information need? Okay, what fraction of the returned results are relevant to the information need? Recall is what fraction of the relevant documents in the collection were returned by the system. Okay, so we will see this in the form of true positives, true negatives, false positives, and false negatives also. And F1 measure is nothing but a weighted harmonic mean of precision and recall. Okay, so one thing we have to understand is precision or recall is alone not sufficient to analyze the performance of an IR system. So let's see with an example. Suppose a computer program recognizes dogs in photographs and identifies 8 dogs in a picture containing 12 dogs and some cats. Out of the 8 identified as dogs, 5 are actually dogs while rest are cats. So what will be the precision and recall of this program? Anyone can answer? So how many dogs are there? There are 8 dogs identified, out of which only 5 were correct. So 5 by 8 is the precision. And there are 12 dogs in this picture, out of which only 5 were correctly identified. So 5 by 12 is the recall. And then your F measure will be 2 into precision into recall upon precision plus recall, which is the F1 measure where P and R are equally weighted. It's the harmonic mean of precision and recall such that P and R are equally weighted. The program's precision is 5 by 8, recall is 5 by 12. So when a search engine returns 30 pages, only 20 of which were relevant, while failing to return 40 additional relevant pages, what is the precision of the system and what is the recall of the system? The precision of the system is 2 by 3 and recall of the system is 2 by 6 because it says 40 additional pages. 2 by 6, which is equivalent to 1 by 3. Okay. So in layman's language, precision is how useful the results are and recall is how complete the results are. So whether it's including everything that is there in the corpus or how precise the answers are, this is precision. And how much complete the results are, this is recall. So we have the concept of true positives and false positives, true negatives and false negatives. What is it? So suppose a system is, we have our annotation and we have our system output. If annotation is 1 and our system says 1, this is true positive. Okay. Our annotation is 0 and system says 1, it is a false positive. Means it's a positive but false positive. If the annotation is 0 and the system also outputs 0, it's a true negative. and if the system annotates is at 1 and actually the system gives it 0, then it's a false negative. Okay, so it's like this. Okay, retrieved and relevant is true positive, not retrieved and not relevant is true negative, retrieved but not relevant is true false negative, and retrieved and not relevant is false positive. You can go over this later. It's there in the book, an introduction to information retrieval by Christopher Manning, Heinrich Schulze, and Prabhakar Raghavan, as I already told you. So precision is true positives upon which is true positives plus true positives upon false positive. That is the thing in the matrix, and recall is true positives upon true positives plus false negative. Then one measure which we have is accuracy. Accuracy is basically you take the true positives plus true negative upon divided by all the 4 values, and that gives you the accuracy. How many correct results were there among the total results? But this is not considered as a very good measure, because if I say I want to detect the documents which contain the term VNIT. Out of the World Wide Web, where there are millions and trillions of documents, a very small fraction point, not one, will be having VNIT as its entries. So by returning all documents as non-relevant, I increase the accuracy of my system very high because of the factor of true negatives. But that doesn't give me any useful or qualifying information. That's the reason accuracy is not a very good measure. And why do we need precision and recall both? One could have been sufficient, right? But we need both. The reason for that is basically we need precision for documents like when we are browsing, we are happy with the first few results. But when we are searching for some legal documents, we want all the exhaustive searches of legals and paralegals need systems with high recall. A normal surfer will need systems with high precision. So in this way, precision and recall are both important, and we can give them weight according to how the system needs it. So here is the weighting. 1 upon alpha times 1 by p plus 1 minus alpha times 1 by r. And that reduces to beta square plus p pr upon beta square p plus r, where beta square is basically 1 minus alpha plus alpha. You can work out these calculations. And when you put beta as 1, which means that p and r are given equal importance, you get 2 pr upon p plus r, which we saw earlier. So values of beta less than 1 emphasize on precision. Greater than 1 emphasize on recall, and equal to 1 they make precision and recall equally weighted. And why do we take the geometric mean, or why do we take the harmonic mean instead of arithmetic or geometric mean? That is because the harmonic mean is more closer to the smaller value than the arithmetic or geometric mean. Okay. This was about evaluation of unranked retrieval. Now we can see the evaluation of ranked retrieval. Before that, let me ask how much time we have. Yes, sir or ma'am, can you confirm how much time do we have?
Ma'am, you can continue, no problem, ma'am.
Okay. So evaluation of ranked retrieval. In the ranked retrieval context, what happens is we have documents, but they are not just 1 or 0. They are having a rank associated with them. A document is more relevant, the next document is a bit less relevant, the next document is bit even less relevant, and there is an order in them. So how do we evaluate? So for that, we have this precision recall curve. What do you mean by precision recall curve? You have you plot the recall values between 0 and 1 and precision values between 0 and 1, and you have recall on the x-axis and precision on the y-axis. So as you can see in the graph on the figure, precision is 1. What does that mean? precision is 1 means that the first document was relevant, but recall was 0.5. Recall was point something and precision dropped to 0.5 in the second document. Third document, it rose to 0.6 something, 0.6 something. Then again a relevant document. So this indicates a relevant document. When there is a drop, this indicates a non-relevant document. This indicates a relevant, this indicates a relevant, this is not relevant, this is relevant, not relevant, this is relevant, this is relevant, and so on. So when you go down, it's not relevant. When you go up, it's a relevant document. And why do you get this sawtooth curve? You get this sawtooth curve because the moment you get a relevant document, you are fine. Precision is 1, recall is 1. Next document you get not relevant. Your precision drops to, precision remains 1/2, it drops to 0.5 and recall remains same. Recall doesn't change because there are same number of documents which have been retrieved till now. So that's why it drops like in a straight line, and that's why you get a sawtooth curve. Okay. So this I will skip in the interest of time. So the only measure by which we can calculate the mean average precision of a system is by considering the only measure by which we can compare two IR system is by the metric of mean average precision. Mean average precision, what it does is it calculates the precision at every relevant document, divides it by the number of relevant documents, and averages this process over number of queries. So how that is done, let's see. Okay, how that is done, let's see. So suppose there is one query, there are two queries, and you have N, R, 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 N, and here you have N, N, R, N, R. Okay, so what is the precision at this? It is 1/2 because it is the second relevant document and you have 2 as the denominator, and it's the first relevant document. So 1 is the numerator and number of documents retrieved till this point is 1 and 2. So 1/2 plus here 2/3 plus 3/4 plus nothing. So close this bracket and divide it by number of relevant documents 3, and you have one more such query. So you do 1/3 plus 2/5. This will be 2/5. This will be 1/3, and divide it by 1/2 because there are two relevant documents, and you add these two and divide it by 1/2 because there are two queries. So if there are 10 queries, you would write 1/10. This is the way you calculate the map, and it's the only measure by which you can do it. Precision at k is, you calculate the precision at the kth document. Okay, and our precision is, if there are n number of relevant documents, you calculate the precision at the nth document and return that value. Break-even point is when precision becomes equal to the recall. Break-even point is when precision becomes equal to the recall. So what is the difficulty in evaluating IR system? The main difficulty is like, if I have a document about Turing machine, so a computer scientist might find it very relevant, but a commerce person may not be able to relate to it. So maybe the query is relevant to Turing machine's document, but a commerce graduate is not able to make the relevance. So who is annotating the data? It makes the overall process very subjective and user-centric. So this is the major difficulty in IR, and there is a lot of fairness issue in IR. So from the figure, can you tell me which document is relevant and which is not? This is R, then your recall drops. So it is N, precision remains same. Then you get a relevant document, again a relevant document, not relevant, not relevant, not relevant, 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 not relevant, not relevant, 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 not relevant, not relevant, not relevant, relevant, not relevant, not relevant. So in this way, you can fill these queries and you can have the calculations. Then another concept which I want to highlight here is, now when you do the annotation, as I told you, it's very user centric. So there have to be multiple users who are annotating the data as relevant or not relevant. If I have, say, 3 annotators, I will calculate the kappa measure or kappa value between these annotators. And if it is less than 0.67, it means that they don't agree amongst themselves. What that means is the annotation is not consistent. So we will not accept that annotation. But if the annotation is above 0.67, like the kappa measure, then we can accept it. And above 0.8, it is considered as a good value. This is the calculation of kappa statistics. It comes from social sciences, history, geography, and social sciences. It's not, it's a mathematical technique. We just use it in information retrieval. We don't know the intuition behind it, but it just calculates by how much degree the judges or the annotators agree amongst themselves. Okay. Then we also have relevance feedback in information retrieval. What do you mean by relevance feedback? Relevance feedback is simply like user issues a query and the system returns its initial set of relevant results. Okay, the user issues a query and the system returns an initial set of relevant results. Then the user will mark, okay, document 1 was relevant, 2 was relevant, 3 was not relevant, 4 was not relevant, 5 was relevant. Based on this, the query is reformulated by the search engine, and then we get the revised results. The user again marks, and this iteratively continues so that at the end, the user is satisfied with the results. But this process is very much a failure technique in IR. That is because users are very lazy to give feedback. How many times in Zomato do we give feedback, or in Uber, Ola do we give feedback? Unless it blocks us from proceeding further for the next booking, we don't tend to give the feedback by remembering it and giving it. So that's the reason information retrieval relevance feedback system has been much a failure technique. So for calculating the relevance feedback, we have this Roche algorithm where we basically have an original query, and then we have the set of relevant documents, set of non-relevant documents, and we try to move the query towards the centroid of relevant documents and away from the centroid of non-relevant documents. This is the main concept. And then these are the mathematical details which you can look up later. So you can see here the revised query is more close to the set of relevant documents than to the set of non-relevant documents. That is the basic idea. And also it is always important to have some positive feedback. Multiple negative feedbacks don't give you much information, but one positive feedback gives you a lot of information which can be useful. So what is pseudo-relevance feedback? In pseudo-relevance feedback, what you do is you simply return the top few documents relevant, and that is taken as the relevant. So for example, if I say top 5, then first 5 are taken as relevant and the calculations are done. So that the user need not tick mark which is relevant and which is not. And implicit relevance feedback is when you have a set of documents displayed to the user, and the user doesn't mark them, but he clicks on some result, clicks on some link. So by that click mechanism, it is indicative that he's interested in that link. That's why he found it useful. So he clicked on it. So from that, you can take the implicit feedback. Okay. And then I have some slides on hits and PageRank algorithm, but I don't know how much time we have. So maybe someone can tell me. Should we have the Q&A now?
Ma'am, it will take 15-20 minutes.
5-10 minutes.
No problem, ma'am. No problem.
Okay. So now HITS algorithm. So basically, you must have heard of the PageRank algorithm by Larry Page and other people from Stanford who invented the search engine, Google. So basically, PageRank algorithm works on the principle of inlinks, outlinks, and hyperlinks. So basically, the idea is you represent the web as every document becomes a node, and you represent the web as a graph, and all the hyperlinks indicate the edges between the nodes. Okay. So now suppose I have this graph. And there is a hyperlink in page A which points to D, and there is a hyperlink in page A which points to B, and there is a hyperlink in page B which points to A, and so on. Based on this, we have the PageRank algorithm, which I have not discussing here, but I am showing the HITS algorithm in brief. So what do you mean by a hub? A hub is a page which points to many important pages. And authority is a page which is pointed to by many pages and has lot of inlinks. And this HITS algorithm is a mutually recursive algorithm. Okay. So for each page, you have two scores, hub score and authority score. Okay. So AI is a summation of all the hub scores, and HI is the summation of all authority scores. So AI is calculated by summing up the hub scores, and hub score is calculated by summing up the authority score. It's mutually recursive. Okay. So what you do is initially you mark all the hub values as 1 for all the nodes in the graph. Okay. Practically the graph will be very huge, but we are demonstrating it on the same graph. Okay. A small graph, I mean. So now how many inlinks are there to A? There is only one inlink to A from B. So AA will be equal to HB will be equal to 1. How many inlinks are there to AC? There are two inlinks, B and A. So HA plus HB, which will become to 2. And so on. Similarly for AD, there are 3 inlinks. So it comes out to be 3. And then these values are normalized. And you keep on doing it for, you keep on calculating the hub values again and normalize them. Now you start with these new hub values and keep on doing the calculations and normalize. And you stop after how many iterations? You will stop after number of iterations according to the threshold. If the values are not changing beyond values are changing, but within a particular threshold. Like for example, I say 0.001 is my threshold. If the values are not even changing by that value, you can stop. That is fixed point iteration. Okay, now we come to some important thing which will be very useful for you in your research if you are interested. What are the hot topics in information retrieval? The hot topics in information retrieval are multimedia information retrieval about images, audio, video, then cross-language information retrieval, which is about cross-language information retrieval. That is, you give the query in English, you want the results in German. You give the query in German, you want the results in Spanish, and so on. Then we have music information retrieval, where we want to retrieve information from music notes. Opinion extraction and sentiment analysis. We all have heard this term. What is the emotion behind your review? For market analysis, you want to say that a movie was good or bad, and so on. We extract the opinions of the users about products, movies, any kind of service, etc. Then personalized information retrieval, like you want to give personalized results to. For example, I build my profile and I say I am a VNIT professor. So depending on my profile, it will give me personalized content. And then federated information retrieval, that is parallel information retrieval or distributed information retrieval. We have automatic text summarization, which means we want to automatically create a summary of huge text that will help users, because the amount of data on the web or on the in general digital data is increasing so drastically and big data coming into picture, we need to form summaries. Then we have adversarial information retrieval, where we have advertisers and other information displayed. Like for example, when you are in your Gmail, you will get some advertisers depending on your. Then I have worked on geographical information retrieval, which is a confluence of geography and information retrieval. And I have some publications on that. You can refer on the internet for that. If you search for IEEE Access, I have a paper on geotagging of web documents. And also I have a paper in the COSIT Germany conference where it is on detecting the spatialness of prepositions. Okay. So yeah, I told you about multimedia, cross-language, music information, personalized, adversarial, federated, summarization, sentiment analysis. Then one thing is multimodal information retrieval. What do you mean by multimodal information retrieval? You have multiple modes like text, image, video. So you want to take information from text also, image also, and video also, or maybe and then you want to analyze both and then come to conclusion. That is called as multimodal information retrieval, where you take input from multiple modes. And last thing I want to tell you is that information retrieval, machine learning, and natural language processing go hand in hand, and they all work together. Okay. So if you want to do research in some fields, I told you some hot topics. In addition, you can work on question answering, recommender systems, query auto completion, auto text summarization, as you already told you, then diversification of search results, and the list goes on. It's a very hot area and you can explore it as much as you want. Thank you for your patient listening. Any questions? And before I conclude, I have my email ID and phone number with Sonal ma'am and other faculty of GHRIBM. And if you have any queries after the session and you want to reach out to me or any research related queries, please do feel free to reach out and do not hesitate. And I'll be more than happy to answer. So I open the forum for questions, if any, now.
So if anybody wants to ask any questions, he or she can put it in chat box or can unmute themselves for the same. And we are having some questions in chat box. The first is, does Google retrieve
the impact of IR on the web? Okay, so impact of IR on the web is basically it works on the web. So web works as the corpus for it, and the web is increasing day by day. So information retrieval systems need to work more precisely and becomes a huge challenge for them, because on the entire web, it needs to search and quickly give the result, and user will not wait for 10 minutes to get the answer. So it has to quickly do that. So indexing techniques and relevance ranking techniques have to be more efficient. How can a document have a frequency? A document can have a frequency because it is the frequency of the document in the corpus. How many documents contain that particular term? That is the document frequency of a term in a corpus. So it's document frequency of a term in a corpus. A document doesn't have a frequency. A term has a frequency. Okay. How does Google retrieve the data in the same way and give in seconds in which it has done? So we have seen that, right? There are many advanced BM25 and other ranking techniques, so it takes a subset of the results which are relevant. It does the processing and it has that index built in the background. So it processes through that index, whatever, even if the web is big, your query has only 2-3 words. So it goes to the index and takes those 2-3 words and works on those posting lists and gives you the answer. Have I answered all the questions?
Yeah, madam, am I audible? Madam, am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, you are audible.
Now today's world is of big data and big data analytics. Data is getting generated at every minute. So there will be any other model of information retrieval considering this from the big data point of view?
Yes, research is going on. So we have to work on summarizing the data. Like we cannot keep on working on the huge documents. Like for example, if there is a book, we have to work on tagging. We have to tag the book with some tags, like for Stack Overflow or for other, you have tags associated with it. Similarly, we need to put tags to the documents. And that tagging is an important step, because if the tag is matching, we can immediately pull out that document as relevant. Okay. So for example, I am searching for bookshops in Delhi. And if I have a geographical tag to my documents, I will not give you output of bookshop in Nagpur, because Nagpur tag will be there and Delhi tag will be there with the documents. Are you getting it? So tagging is one method. And then another method is basically you have to index it properly and periodically update the index. Hope I answered the question.
Yes. Ma'am. So there is a scope of research for information retrieval regarding using big data.
Of course. Yes, there is a lot of research going on in the field, and it is a very ripe field. You can always pursue research in this area.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So I think all the questions are over now. And so last but not the least, I would like to thank our special guest, Mansi Radke ma'am, who despite of her busy schedule has found time to grace this session with her valuable knowledge. And I also express my heartfelt thanks to Mrs. Sonal Patil ma'am and all the coordinating members of CSITA for taking one more